Hello, this is Demetra Clark, the director of Heart of Herbs Herbal School. And today on the Heart of Herbs Herbal School podcast, I know it's a mouthful, is Lisa Ganora, who runs herbalconstituents.com. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And she has the Herbal Constituents book on the market. And it's a resource that we encourage our students to purchase and to use. And I'm just so excited to have you on here today. We even have a lecture from you in our student materials. And one of the things I always hear is, I never thought constituents could be so much fun. So our people are huge fans, and we are so grateful that you were willing to do that with us. I think it was about, what, 2 years ago now, 3 years ago
It's
now?
been, yeah,
Been a
who knows?
while.
Time does weird things lately.
But I wanted to say welcome and thank you so much for being here. Can
Yeah,
you please just tell us a little bit about yourself?
sure. Let's see how far back. How far back do we go? 1986. I lived on Cape Cod. I started hearing about like women healers and herbs, kind of hovering around, and I'm like, oh, what's all this? And back then it was in Provincetown, so I was kind of out in the ocean, and I was trying to figure my life out, right? I was like, who am I? Am I an artist? Am I a photographer? Am I a classical musician? Like, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing on this earth? And I started having dreams, right? And I started dreaming. In one of these dreams, this elder, native elder, was sitting down in a kiva with her back to me, and she had some things arranged out in front of her. And I walked up in it was a lucid dream, right? I walked up in the dream and I saw her and I stopped, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't bother this person. They're doing something important. And then I stood there for a minute and thought, and I'm like, I'm here and she's here in this dream. That's
Which is mine.
don't walk away. So I, very respectfully walked down in and sat down opposite of her. And after a little while, she looked up and she said to me, well, I knew you were coming, but I didn't think it would take this long.
Don't you love it when your dreams have attitude?
I know. And I was like, okay, this is for real. I will not look away. I'm going to pay attention. And she showed me three things that were laid out, three ceremonial objects. And one of them was a wreath made of herbs, with herbs twisted all around the grapevines. And she pointed to everything and she said, memorize these. And so I looked at them for a while and memorized them. And then she looked up at me and she didn't tell me what to do. She didn't tell me how to do it. She just looked up at me and got this big smile on her face and dissolved and vanished. And I woke up and went, what happens here? What am I supposed to, who was that? And, short story, I had a series of dreams like that when I was out there, and the plants were calling to me. And so I followed that. I followed up with that by my first herb that I used medicinally was dandelion root, right? And I had gotten like super addicted to chocolate. It's crazy. I was eating so much of it, I was making myself sick. And I was
That
so
is an
ignorant of health, I
addiction.
didn't even realize that like the chocolate was followed an hour later by the blood sugar crash, and I felt terrible. And then I ate more chocolate and I'd be great again. So I went through this wrangle with that. And a friend of mine turned me on to dandelion root. And she's like, when you get the craving, drink the dandelion root tea. She showed me how to make a really strong tea with it, like an infusion. And just drink a cup of the tea, and then don't fight with yourself, because you're going to lose. If it's like, an addictive kind of relationship, you're going to lose. Don't fight with yourself. Just do what you got to do, but always drink the tea first. And I did it. And the first time, I kid you not, I went to eat the chocolate bar. Instead of eating the whole thing, I ate half. And then my body was like, good enough. And that was 1 cup of dandelion root tea. I know, right? So I kept doing it, and I was all skeptical and stuff. I don't know, I'm drinking weeds. This is super weird, But I kept doing it and it kept working. And after about 2 weeks, I had zero desire for chocolate anymore. And I was like, I need to learn about these herbs because nobody in school, like I've been to college and stuff,
Mhm.
nobody in school told me that this was a real thing.
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah.
I was pre-med studies.
Hmm.
And it's all like, oh, isn't that funny superstition that your grandma used to do? Ha ha, study the real medicine over here, you know.
Old wives' tale. Right.
Old, well, yeah. Oh, that was an old wife down there in that
Yeah,
key.
yeah.
You know? So
Wow.
yeah, the dreams and the dandelion and a whole world started opening up. I'm like, I really need to know about this. Um, so I connected 1986, I connected with the Wise Woman Center up in Saugerties, New York, Susan Weed's place.
Hmm.
And I was like broke ass, like, all right, I didn't have any money. So I wrote an actual letter. This before we had the internet, y'all. Oh my gosh. And I sent it up there. And I said, hey, I do photography. I can trade. Can I come up? This dream happened. And so I got invited up there and it was a summer solstice event. I forget exactly. And it completely blew my mind because there was a group of women there communicating with plants and doing this whole oral tradition of plant healing. And it just like, this exists. That was like, I remember driving out the driveway for the first time. I was like, oh, what am I getting into? But everyone was super friendly and I learned so much. And then I went back and then I went back again. So that was the first tradition that I learned herbalism in.
Oh, okay,
Which is
nice.
great because it gave me this hands-on, medicine making, wildcrafting, learn directly from the plants, have a relationship with the plants, and all the kind of shamanic type aspects involved. And I did that for about 10 years. And I also hung out with traditional nurse midwives back
Nice.
there in Western Mass. Yeah, when I moved to Western Mass from the Cape, which was like a special class of humans, right? With
Hmm.
amazing skills and also just this long history of using herbs in very specific contexts and really understanding the safety and the dosage and when to use what. So I followed a lot of those folks around and be like, I'll carry your tools, I'll dig your root for you, I didn't even know there was such a thing as an herb school back then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I did that for a while. And then I ended up moving to I was in Massachusetts for about 10 years doing like the village herbalist and going to
Hmm.
some births and different stuff. Had a kid and decided I needed to move to the Southern Appalachians because my family had a house way back in the woods up in Yancey County.
Hmm.
And it was empty at the time. And I was like, I need a place to live. So that whole relationship with those herbs and those mountains and those traditions just really, you know, that was it. Like, this is what I'm doing with my life. This is it. Um, it was just amazing. I mean, it's an amazing part of the country. It's gorgeous, you
Yeah,
know.
my grandmother is from there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she went to finishing school in Asheville and worked at Woolworths. That was her first job.
Wow. Woolworths
Yeah.
was still there
So,
when I moved there.
huh?
Woolworths was still open when I moved there. We used to go in there. Oh,
Yeah, no, and then she ran off to marry my grandfather and have 7 children. But and
woo.
then they never strayed far from the mountains, even when he was,
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's something that gets in your soul,
absolutely.
that kind of
100%.
connection.
Like, I can't wait to get back. I'm going on a big road trip in May, and that's like the star of the road trip is
Oh, cool.
the area. Visiting some of my old plant stands. Hopefully they survived the hurricane and, it's a lot of destruction down there. But
Yeah, definitely.
I still have a lot of friends in the area and it's just, it's my other home, really.
Oh, nice.
If I wouldn't live here, I would live there.
Okay, all right, fair enough, right? We always have those few
Yeah.
places that tug on our heartstrings. So when you were in there, down there,
Mm.
what was happening next? So you moved to the
Yeah, so
mountains and
continued doing the wild crafting, selling the herbal products, hanging out with the midwives, just making do, plant rescues for when they were putting the highway in. Worked on a organic ginseng and golden seal woods grown farm for a while, lived in a teepee, spent some
Nice.
time at Joe Hollis's mountain gardens, lived in a teepee there, did the down home herbalist life. And then somebody suggested to me that I should go back to college, because at that point you could get grants and super cheap student loans. And, I was a single mom with a kid. So they're like, why don't you just do that? You can get enough money to live on. You can learn more stuff. And, I thought about it. I'm like, that sounds fun, right? Beats
Yeah.
welfare, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I enrolled at UNCA in the biology department. And I was shooting for a minor in chemistry, which I missed by one class because it wasn't scheduled my last semester. So I did a lot of chemistry, a lot of biology, all the plant ID and field studies, learned how to key and do a botanical key. And everything, all the independent studies thing, like independent research project, I made it be about herbal medicine or medicinal plants. And I was the weirdo back then, right? So I graduated from there in 2000. So this is the late 90s. This is what I was doing in the late 90s. They were all like, well, isn't she interesting? Except the plant physiology professor kind of got it. But at that point, academia and traditional herbal medicine didn't quite know what to do with each other, and that's gone a long way since then. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, I was the edgy one. I was that strange, eccentric, but smart kid who like wrote a thesis about phytolacca, pokeweed, and all these things. But I had a great time there. I love just being able to dive into that and, learn the sciences that are behind that have really come up now to infuse modern herbalism.
Yeah.
And when I graduated, I was like, this is so cool. I now have this hands-on community herbalist, wise woman tradition background, and this scientific education. How do I put those together? And what sort of herbalist am I going to make my career into? And I thought about it and I'm like, herbal constituents. No one is talking very much. People are starting to be curious about that, but there's not a good book out there,
You wrote
and
it.
yeah, on purpose,
Yeah.
because there were like good like pharmacognosy books, which is like what the pharmacy schools would, it's like PhD type stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
post baccalaureate stuff. There was good stuff, but it was hard to understand for people with an herbal background, or maybe you hadn't studied years of chemistry and everything. So I'm like, I'm gonna study all of this stuff with the help of the great Jim Duke. He really inspired me. James Duke.
Definitely an inspiration.
James Duke. Yeah. I sought out, it's like, who knows about this? I sought out a few people. And so I studied, after I graduated, I studied that. And fortunately I had the background to understand it. And then I started translating it so it would be more practical for herbalists. And also so you could have an actual personal relationship with phytochemicals, right?
Yeah.
Because you can smell them, you can taste them. Some of them you can smell, some of this aromatherapy, right? That's
Yeah.
some of them you can taste, some of them have a particular feel, like mucilages are slippery, tannins are dry, some of them you can tell by the colors. So I spent a lot of time weaving together the sensory experience of herbs and how you can communicate with a plant that way, with what's behind it in the herbal constituents world and with the physiological activities of those constituents. And also how that applies to medicine making. Like, why would I tincture this herb versus make it into fire cider, or drink a water infusion, or make a oil or a salve out of it, because you can bring so many different kinds of medicines out of one herb, depending on how you, what you make with it, how you extract it. And what that's also chemistry behind that, like herbal chemistry behind those principles, right? Because some things really come out in water well, and some things need higher percent ethanol, like, in tinctures, and
Mm-hmm.
that's alcohol. And some things really make a really good oil infusion. So learning how to put together, the constituents, their solubility, their activity, and all that kind of stuff is a way to understand how to make better medicines out of plants also. Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's what I got fascinated with, and I'm still doing it. 20
Yeah, no,
years.
we always hear students that always love like they go and check out your stuff after they
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, check out this book," because your enthusiasm for your topic is contagious. I love how you mentioned the fact that an herb can do more than one thing. So like I always try to like really encourage students to like, yes, you can use it this way or this way, but it's like there's more than one application. There's like more than
Mhm.
one way to make a cake, and they're like, oh, like that light bulb moment when they're very beginning and it's like echinacea for this or this is for that. And then you see
Yeah.
that like the whole thing just like kind of explode and they're like, whoa,
Yeah.
hang on a sec.
Yeah,
So
it's like you think you're going to learn an herb, it's like I'm going to study
no,
a
nice
whole week
try.
and then I'll know it. And then all of a sudden, this still happens,
Oh yeah.
like routinely. I'm like, oh, I think I know what I'm doing. I think I know. And then I learn something new about the plant. And I'm like, wait,
Oh,
how did I not know
absolutely.
this for 30 years, because plants are so deep, they're really complex,
Oh
and
yeah.
so it totally makes sense to learn like one herb, one action at first, but
Hmm.
you got to realize it's like, wow, that's herb kindergarten. It just keeps going.
I
you know,
love that. I'm gonna have to steal that phrase, herb
Herb
kindergarten,
kindergarten,
because
yeah.
it's true. It's like that's like the basic worksheet. What color is this? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like basic worksheet. But it's
yeah.
a lot more. Herbs are a lot more involved and
Mhm.
complex and simple than we think. You know what I mean? Like
It's all over the place.
it's
It's
all
so
over the place. I
straightforward.
love that you first started with like the wise woman tradition.
Right.
That I did some early work with that. When you said you wrote a letter, I remember sending in my written homework. So I love that. But I think that it's important that people understand that you can be, quote, very scientific and write a book about constituents, right?
Right.
But you can also understand the beauty, the grace, and the mystery at the
Mhm.
same time. And I think that sometimes I see different herbal approaches that it's like all or nothing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, then where do I fit in? Like, so if
Yeah.
you're listening to this and you love both theories,
Mhm.
Lisa is a good example of how those things can work
Mhm.
together.
We shouldn't, one thing I've learned throughout my long life is not to limit herbs with my own opinion. You know what I mean? I'll be like, oh, that's good for this, or I don't like this herb, or that doesn't work very well, or that's amazing, or that doesn't do this, or that
That's
doesn't
the
do.
only thing for this, you know.
I try not to do that at all anymore because herbs continually surprise me.
Yeah, it's like as we have the opportunity to dig deeper, more is being uncovered. It's like an archaeological site, you
It
know?
really is. It's the discovery and the mystery. You know what I mean? You're just like, oh,
Wait, what?
guess what I found out? And then I get all, I used to really be into archaeology as a kid. So great analogy.
Oh, perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
I'm really into anthropology, so like for me, herbalism was just it made sense.
Uh-huh.
You would use what's around you if you were a community or whatever. So why
Right.
would this not be a good thing to do? I mean,
Right. Right.
so it's interesting how we can take so much from the past
Mm-hmm.
when it's convenient and not acknowledge things from the past when it's not. And it's like, yeah, there's a reason why people use something for so long.
Yeah. Or the plant is named after the condition,
Yeah.
like you probably think of a few of those like self-heal, Prunella vulgaris, right?
Yeah.
Self-heal or heal all. super interesting herb, right? The
Mm-hmm.
German name for it, I'm not going to butcher it by trying to say it, but the German name for it is the word for infected bleeding gums or
Oh,
gingivitis.
try to say it.
Yeah, it's like
Uh,
Brunel or something close to that. Um, you know, and it's just like, okay, if a plant is named after a condition, there's a pretty good chance
well, a
that it was
snake bite
expensive.
root.
What's that?
You know, snake bite root is like
Yeah,
one of the
snake bite.
names of like,
Like that guy.
we always tell students to learn the Latin name
Oh yeah,
because there's so many common names out there that overlap are the same, or there's like four or five
absolutely.
plants that carry the same common name
Yeah, besides
to the
besides
world.
knowing like Latin names is like it's like, you know, in the Harry Potter verse, it's like you can cast a spell with a Latin name.
Well, I
I
could
think
talk to anyone with it. So I remember I've gone to herb markets in Turkey and in Egypt and then different places in Europe. And so I would go in and I'd just be looking around, and we couldn't necessarily speak the same language. I didn't know Farsi. I didn't know, Arabic
yeah,
or anything like that. But I could say the Latin name of the herb, and we were
right.
suddenly vibing. We were
Yeah,
suddenly like, okay, understanding each other and making faces and hand
very good.
gestures or slight
Yeah.
language overlap to figure out what was going
Mhm.
on. And I think that the Latin names or the scientific names, no matter what you call them, right? I think
Mm.
they open you up to each other herbally.
That's really cool. Yeah, because it's like the lingua franca, you know, it's
Yeah.
like it's the language. It's like, oh, we can talk about prunella.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a cool
Yeah.
thing. But it does help keep you straight with your species. I mean, you know, that's one of the fun things when you're first getting into herbalism too. You learn your plant identification, right? And you can get better and better and better at that your whole life. But having those scientific names, it like, you know, it puts you in that realm where you're like, okay, I am able to learn this specific plant and not confuse it with other plants, which, you know, you don't want to make those mistakes. So yeah, it's important. And it's really cool too. Like one of my favorite things about herbalism is these archaic words you get to use, right? Like archaic medical words and like, you know, energetics language and stuff like that, along with the Latin names. And yeah, it's a whole nother realm. It's got a lot of like kind of mystery appeal to it, you know, at the same
Yeah.
time. And it's not mutually exclusive with science. That's the thing. It's like I communicate with plants. I learned how to do that. You know,
Hmm.
I'll sit down and I'll listen to them and I'll engage my intuitive, you know, my intuitive sense when I'm formulating for a person or something. I think that's equally legitimate stuff as the whole, you know, read the scientific studies, understand the chemistry, you know the human physiology in detail and how they interact, and detoxification enzymes and all the stuff. It's all, you know, it's all part of being a living human in relationship with living plants, you know. So
Absolutely.
I try
Oh,
not to
yeah.
limit myself, although I do
Yeah.
spend a
Well,
lot of time on
it's
them.
funny. I love the scientific names because it helps me visualize the landscape too often when they talk about like alpinus or something like that. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. Like maybe something I've never heard of before. It helps me visualize like where it comes from and this,
That's cool.
I can understand the color even if it's just reading something
Yeah.
and I am not actually looking at it. So
Yeah.
I love that it's a language of its own.
It is.
It just like the work that you do. Like
Yeah. Yeah, that's another language of its own.
that's a
But there's a
whole
lot of
other language.
overlap, fortunately. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, those Latin names, they all mean something. If you
Hmm.
get like, there's a really cool little book. I'm not remembering the name of it now, but it helps you understand what Latin names mean in botany and medicine and stuff. And I mean, it's just a different language. They all have meanings like, you know, tall, spiky plant that grows near the creek or you know what I mean? It's like, it's not just, you know, spells, not just spells.
Maybe a little.
Sesquiterpene lactones.
Yeah.
I always do that when I teach class.
Constipation, no more us.
Yeah, dude. Get yourself a Rowan wand. That's all I can say.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. So what is one of your biggest joys with teaching?
With teaching, oh man, lighting that enthusiasm. That's the thing. It's like when I'm teaching, I get so excited because plants and phytochemistry and all that stuff is just super interesting to share it with people who you see the light bulbs going off, because like with medicine making, for example, and I get to be 9 years old, by the way,
All right.
which is like awesome. But so medicine making is an example. Like we learn first kind of with a recipe, say, you learn from your teachers, like do it this way, use this much of that, use these herbs, whatever. And it's kind of recipe based approach, but we don't necessarily learn at first why we're doing it that way.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Right.
yeah.
It's like, why is this tincture made with 50%,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol? Why
Mm-hmm.
is this? And then you look at tinctures in the store and you're like, why is this one 85%? Why is this one 30%? Like, what is happening there? What are people doing with that? And when you start asking yourself the why questions, then it opens up this whole other realm. And when you learn what's behind the why, then you have amazing skills as a medicine maker, right?
Absolutely.
So I love to teach all kinds of classes, but I try to work some kind of medicine making, constituents-based medicine making thing into most of what I do. And just to like watch the light bulbs go off and people, they're getting the whys behind the, do this, don't do that. Feel like don't use that herb with that medication because you might have an herb drug interaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we go, why?
Why?
How does that work? Learn the details and
Mm-hmm.
learn when it's okay to do that or what form. Like, can I use a tincture? Can I use a tea? How much of it can I use? Like which particular medication are we talking about? Because there's
Yeah.
always all these details behind the things that we learn, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just keeps going, like we were saying, forever. So I think one of my favorite things about teaching is getting people to start asking why they're doing what they're doing, and why they're doing a thing, the way they're doing it. And then once they start understanding the why behind it, it gives you a whole lot more. And this is for clinical practice too. It gives you a whole lot more insight and ability to, for example, formulate for a specific person,
Yeah.
right? Because instead of being like, echinacea is good for the immune system,
Mm-hmm.
you start learning this kind of stuff and you're like, what is it
What's
in
good for
echinacea?
Tom's immune system or whatever.
Yeah, or like
Yeah.
the immune system is complicated. Let's learn about the immune system and how
Yeah.
it works, and
Yeah,
then
maybe we should review our immune system unit.
oh my gosh. I will never learn everything I want to know about the immune
I
system.
will never learn everything I want to know about how humans work.
Really.
Like I always feel like I'm running really fast to play catch up with
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a new advancement or new this or new that I've never heard of before, I'm like, I'm never going to keep up. And I mean, I
Yeah.
guess that's the beauty of our work. It
It is.
always challenges us
Yeah.
and always like
And
makes us
that's
think
that's the beauty of
next.
having a few decades of experience too, because I was such a smarty pants when I was a young herbalist. Like I learned a little bit and then I thought I knew a lot and I had opinions. And I was all like, entranced by my opinions. And now that I'm like just about 65, I have this perspective and I'm like, oh, now I have a sense of like, I know a lot more stuff, but I also know that, there's so much I don't know and that I could still learn that'll make me a better herbalist. And that gives me a lot of respect for my herbal elders. You hear this stuff, it's like respect your elders when you're a young person, you're like, which ones? I think they're all a bunch of, they don't even know how to work a phone. I mean, like what but it's like the herbal elders who've been practicing for 30, 40, 50 years, those people have insights, you know,
Yeah.
and that are just valuable. You can't get anywhere else. Like Paul Bergner was
Mhm.
is my herbal elder that I learned so much about clinical herbalism, vitalist herbalism. I mean, he's a science nerd too,
Mhm.
but just that whole vitalist practices thing and the importance of the food and like the diet is specific to the person and the herbal formula is for the person. It's not just like this herb is good for migraines. It goes like that's the vitalist tradition, right? It goes
Yeah.
way deeper than that. And you start looking at conditions or diseases and actual symptoms that the body
Yeah.
is communicating something underlying is going wrong, you know.
Yeah, yeah. The
That's
body's finding a way to talk to you, right? Or to
listening to the
talk
body
to
is key.
whoever's working with them.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting how we definitely I find that herbalism is one career where you definitely can grow into it long term. So like some
Oh,
careers, like it's like you get a certain age and it's like certain things are just too different or things change too much. But herbalism, I
mhm.
think, keeps challenging you. The longer you're in, the more exciting it becomes, the more you learn, the more you
Mhm.
let go of,
Mhm.
the more you understand. I know nothing. You know,
I know.
I
And
literally am
then you
making
teach
my
students
living
and
off
they're
of
like, but
knowing
you're
nothing.
supposed to be the teacher. And I'm like,
Yeah, well, students will be like, well, what about this for this? And I'm like, well, it's a little bit more complex than that. It's like, yes, you can, but we can also do this. We can also look at this. Why aren't we looking at that? And then they're just like, oh, okay.
you know what that brings up? That's like a huge thing, right? Because even as a practicing, or even as an experienced practicing herbalist, like people will come up to you in the farmer's market or whatever, and they'll be like, "What's good for eczema?" And they'll show you their eczema, and you're like, "Oh, how do I approach this?"
Hmm.
Because most of us in our culture have been trained in allopathic thinking,
Yeah.
right? Take this to make that go away, this for
Hmm.
that. And
Yeah.
then, we have whatever experiences we have with pharmaceuticals that make us want some alternatives. And so in the allopathic mindset, we're like, oh, this drug really didn't do it for me for whatever reason. Maybe there's an herb that I could use instead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we go into allopathic herbalism, which is a
Yeah.
good place to start, but don't get stuck there, right? Because like you just said, it goes deeper, deeper, deeper. And, there's nothing wrong with doing harm reduction too. And
Yeah.
that's like, oh,
Yeah.
I have a pounding headache. Is there an herb I could take for that? And you come up with
Hmm.
something and they feel better. But
Yeah.
but we're always having, as herbalists, we're always having to tell people, it's like, look, we need to find the origins of the condition.
Yeah, it's a long-term commitment.
Yeah,
It's not
it is.
just, I mean, yeah, there are some things. You're right. There's some things A for B and things are taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's great. I always tell my students, like, that's acute herbalism, right?
Yeah,
Like, gotta cut, da 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 da.
exactly.
But like when we're working with clients, it's like one of the first jobs you have as a clinician is to let the client know this is a long-term relationship between the two of us. This is
Mhm.
not a way for me to keep making money off of you. This is,
Right.
this is you having to follow through too. Like you're part of this. And I think it's so empowering for our clients
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
feel like they're part
100%.
of that, right?
Yeah, because it's like the original meaning of the word, we're not allowed to call ourselves doctors and this like it's illegal, but the original meaning of the word doctor is teacher,
Yeah.
Latin meaning, it means the teacher. And so I see the herbalist role as like helping the person to understand what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
especially with chronic conditions, what's going on with their body and where's some of the roots of these conditions are. And it's going to be individualized, right?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and start empowering, supporting them and empowering them to make changes that are going to let the wisdom of the body self-correct some of these conditions, because the
Yeah.
body knows how to heal. That's built in,
Oh, yeah. I mean, we
it's like figuring that out and figuring where your herbal support or your herbal nudges, as Simon Mills would say, it's like just nudge that process and watch it rebalance.
I
And
always say it's like putting in a Lego block,
yeah,
like just filling in the missing piece, like building, working off of the foundation and adding in the blocks that keep everything
yeah,
stable. Because the body will say, it's like when you work with little kids, right? You
Right,
can tell them, close your eyes. Imagine that you've got a sword and you're killing the germ bugs, right? Or whatever. This is like what we used to do. My boys were into knights, right? They
right,
went through
right.
their phase where they're really into knights, right? So it's like
Right.
you're gonna be like, "Grr, you're in battle and blah blah blah," and that's your body taking care of itself. And I swear they still do this to this day. They may not admit it, but I
Yeah.
think like they know their body will, they've learned to trust that thing. And
Mhm,
I think we're taught not to
mhm.
trust our ability to
Oh,
heal,
totally. I mean,
right?
that's a huge gap in American education. You don't learn how your body works and you don't learn how money works.
Yeah, right.
Right?
So
Most
I don't
people
know
have
if you
no
know
idea
anything
how they're
about
getting
me, but I
and
teach
why
herbal
they've
business
gotten to this.
courses just for the money part. Like
Yeah,
you
it's,
need because
money
we're
is
we're
kind of
deficient
power.
in those areas.
Hmm. Yeah. And that goes back to what the wise woman tradition teaches. It's like learn your body, go within, establish like what is your liver telling you by doing this, because I mean we tend to, that's another like a bit of a thing that I think allopathic medicine could improve on is a lot of times they think the protocols, are
Mhm.
gold standard of treatment. It's like you have this named disease entity, you have it somewhere, you got it,
Yeah.
oh, you have eczema. Eczema must be on my mind today. Here is the treatment approved, by the insurance company will pay for it or whatever. Here's the standard treatment for that condition. And it doesn't really work that way
Mhm.
because, while people with eczema will have some things in common, they will also be different,
Oh, yeah,
and it
absolutely.
can have a different set of causes in different people. And different people can respond to herbs differently too. That's a
Oh, absolutely.
relationship. A person and an herb are in relationship. It's not going to be the same, you know. It's like think about yourself like in your grandma, like that relationship, be
Hmm.
yourself and like your exciting new boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever friend.
Hmm.
Like you're a different person in those different relationships.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that happens between herbs and people too.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, even if you have two people who have the same, we'll use eczema trigger, right? They both are allergic to some laundry detergent, we'll say, right?
right,
Because
right.
that's a common one if you work
Yeah,
with
yeah,
children, right? And they could come to you, it could look exactly the same, the trigger is exactly the same, and the treatments are completely different
yeah,
because of who that person is, what they eat,
exactly.
what they're exposed to, what their stress is like,
Yeah,
what kind of water they use to bathe with. I mean,
right.
like we forget that everything that is of the most success in our country, and I'll say the world, when it
Yeah,
comes to healing, is when we have a personalized approach. But
absolutely.
in our country, the personalized approach is really the gold standard, like you were saying.
Mhm.
Oh, here's the gold standard approach, which is we give you
Right.
this protocol A, B, or C, and this is what's going to work. And we can sell that like it's personalized, but there's no person in it. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah,
you get a
it's
handout. Here's what you use, and the
in
personalized
7
approach doesn't
minutes,
exist.
like diagnostic tests, prescription next, and
Yeah, and I feel bad. I'll be honest with you. I feel bad for physicians. I
oh
wouldn't
God,
want someone telling me I can only spend 15 minutes with a patient.
it's crazy.
You
I
can't get
mean,
anything
not
done.
the doctor's fault because that's the
Yeah.
system, but a lot of them are ditching the system too. They're
Oh,
nuts.
you
Not
see their
conventional
Instagram
medicine.
reels.
Yeah. I think medicine is evolving, but every big system has inertia. It's
Yeah.
like dragging along, getting gradually more messed up, but it's also evolving at the same time. And that's where I get really excited because I work with pharmacists, naturopathic physicians, functional medicine doctors,
Hmm.
like people, healthcare professionals of various kinds, because they've been trained in the chemistry and the physiology language. So
Yeah.
they have this background where we have a common understanding and a common language, right? And then we go off into the things we've been talking about, the individual, action response things, that people have a relationship with herbs, and the intuitive approach, and plant, spirit, medicine, and all this stuff. And some of them aren't quite ready for that. And some of them just like fully embrace it. And they're like, wow, the world just got so more multifaceted and amazing, you know. But I really love working with healthcare professionals, because the ones who are curious about, is there more, like what's going on, those are the kind of people that come and take my online classes, or come to workshops and lectures and stuff. So I do spend, and we get to use the nerdy constituent words, and you know, the fun equipment, and all the things. So I have a really good time with that too. But like any kind of herbalist. So here's the thing with what I do. Like, a lot of people think herbal chemistry is just this hard, gnarly, esoteric, you know, thing that they're just like, I don't even want to learn that, you know, because that's kind of what you got in school with chemistry. Like
Oh, yeah. It was like a learning a foreign language, right?
yeah,
It
with
was like,
math.
oh,
It's all
yeah, with
math
math.
infused. And it's like, if you have a, you know, if math isn't your favorite topic, that makes it harder. But a lot of people, so we've, and it's just like, man, my organic chemistry teacher was so bad. I mean, bless his heart, he was like, taught super fast, like super conventional guy, ready to retire. And that class was the biggest challenge, because I was super excited about it. I'm like, ooh, organic chemistry. I did my general chem and everything. So that was a wrangle, but it did teach me a lot of important skills, like how to draw chemical structures and write without looking down at your paper, you know, things like that. Yeah. But you know, when I graduated, I got like all these awards in chemistry and stuff. And when I graduated, he was like, I've got a entry level position for you, making $60,000 a year. This is in 2000, at this pharmaceutical company. Do you want it? And I was like, oh, that's a temptation, having been like a broke student for the last.
Yeah. Well, what a flattering like thing to have
Yeah,
someone offer you,
I
you know,
know. I
something
was
like
really
that.
touched too. And I'm just like, you sweet old super conventional difficult chemistry teacher, you. I really appreciate that. But I'm going in a
I'm
different
wired
direction.
another way, but
Yeah, you know, and it was like that. So the way chemistry is taught academically, basically the point of it is to get you ready to like work in, you know, creating molecules, or work in industry, or work in pharmaceuticals, or, you know, the careers, the standard American careers. And I think certain kinds of people really, that really works for them. But it turns a lot of like nature oriented people off.
yeah,
Right.
unfortunately, right? Because it could be something really exciting.
Yeah, that's my goal, is to make like, this is one of my missions in life. It's like, plants make these phytochemicals. It's not a laboratory thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they make them.
Yeah.
Plants do that. They create this stuff on purpose for,
On their own.
yeah. And plants are master pharmacists. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, think about a plant, right? It's out there growing, and all of a sudden, like some hail comes along, and it has to deal with that. Or the grasshoppers show up, it has to deal with that. Or the sun gets really hot, or it dries out, or it's super wet. It's like they can't get up and go inside because
Yeah.
they're rooted, you know?
Yeah.
So they have to deal with stuff by their phytochemical genius.
Yeah.
So they make more of this. They drive the grasshopper away with some volatile compound, if they're lucky. We had a bad grasshopper year last year. You know, they make more anthocyanins if the sun is too hot. They change the way they're handling water. You know, so they've come up with ways to use constituents or phytochemicals to, you know, deal with the
As
fact.
their army.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm sorry, I missed the last word.
Oh, I said like as their army.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Right.
know, they
And
just
their
kick
whole
ass.
toolkit, you know, it's their own apothecary.
Yeah,
They're like, oh, I'll make
exactly.
this, I'll make that, you know. And I think we can have an influence on that. This is a shamanic thing, right? Because that phenomenon where plants make different phytochemicals for their needs, that you end up having plants with, and you know this from aromatherapy, right? You
Mhm.
can have really different things going on in the
Oh
same
yeah.
species of a plant, according to what the plant is up to. But
Yeah.
if you also establish a way to communicate with the plant, and
Mhm.
I think this is like my understanding of what a very, very old universal practice is. You know, the herbalist or the medicine person, the shaman communicates with the plant before they harvest it and asks the plant to make really good medicine for what they're going to do with the plant,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I came up with a term for that. I call that responsive variability.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Responding to the healer, the
You
herbalist.
should you should write a book on that.
I know, right?
Like,
Or at least an
practices to
essay.
help people because a lot of people they have a hard time tapping into this stuff even if they do all the moves. They
Yeah.
still have a hard time breaking through that inside. We work with students sometimes who are like, "Yeah, no, I get it. I understand, but
Mhm.
like they need the trigger to help them open up their doors, right?" So something like
The
that could be
triggers.
awesome. You could do like a workbook or something,
That's it.
right?
Well, so that's like a workshop we do out here at the
Oh,
farm, right?
cool.
I call
How
it
do
like,
people find your website and
oh
your workshop?
yeah. So we have two websites. One of them is focusing on the herbal constituent stuff, and it's called herbalconstituents.com, right? And there's different levels of nerdiness in there. But it's basically for, an herbalist that's had herbalism 101,
Hmm.
okay, like you've learned these things. Or, maybe a healthcare professional. We get a lot of nurses coming in now, which is super
We
interesting.
do too. I love that, right?
Yeah, I'm
Like
like,
it's a
you go.
whole shift.
Um, I'm just blown away by nurses. So it'll be like somebody who's like, okay, I went to herb school. I've got a good foundation in herbs, or I've done my couple of herb programs and um, or people who have done a lot of medicine making, right? Or health
Hmm.
professionals who are like, okay, I understand, the principles. I want to learn the herbs. So that's what most of the herbal constituents type stuff. I have all kinds of classes there. And we started a new thing actually, which is super
Oh,
exciting, which is what I was
please
working
share.
on this stuff for. It's a membership community. This is called Phytosapiens.
Oh, cool.
I know, Phytosapiens. My friend came up with that. She's the
I
genius.
love that.
Grace, thank you. Um, yeah, but that's the next step of nerdiness. That's like, oh, you like this herbal constituents intro that you took? Because I like herbal constituents intro course. And then I have like a 2-semester course if you really want to go into it.
Nice.
So people who have done either one of those, depending on their background, I'm like, okay, let's really nerd out with the so we just are in our second month of that. And that's super fun because I can just unleash, my phytochemistry nerd and do a bunch of research and learn new things about herbs that I thought I knew.
Yeah,
Can I
yeah.
give you an example of that? Because this brings all
Yeah.
of the worlds together. Okay, so earlier when you were talking about, this is good for that, and you've got formulas that generally work for everybody. And so for like a UTI, like a urinary tract infection, like an uncomplicated one, you know, over and over and over again. I learned this from the traditional midwife herbalist. Those are kind of easy to get rid of, like the
Hmm.
occasional urinary tract infection,
Yeah.
you know. Um, if it keeps coming back over and over again, that's telling about underlying stuff. But in just a simple UTI, all the time we would put this formula or variations of this formula together for people, and almost every single time it works, right? And we would put uva ursi and yarrow and echinacea, right? But one of the things we always put in it was marshmallow root.
Hmm.
I still do.
Hmm.
um, and a lot of us have learned that marshmallow root is mucilaginous, it's a demulcent, it's cooling, it's soothing, it's just like really gentle, supportive herb for the mucous membranes, which are also in the bladder and the
Hmm.
urethra, right?
Yeah.
And you put all those together and it just like almost always works, you know? Um, and so I was like, yeah, great demulcent. Nah, nah, nah. And then I was doing some research for this phytosapiens thing. And we're like, we do constituents of the month,
Hmm.
herbs of the month in the lab. live webinar. That's like our weekly thing. And so I was like, which constituents of the month should we start out with? And I was all fascinated with medicinal mushrooms, and they have like polysaccharide, right? Immunomodulating polysaccharides, says that up there. And echinacea has immunomodulating polysaccharides, et cetera. So a lot of the herbs used to deal with, the set of winter woes, the respiratory conditions, and et cetera. So I was like, let's do immunomodulating polysaccharides. That'll be fun. So I started researching it, right? And I knew that like marshmallow had some of those, and as part of the mucilage, right?
Yeah,
Mucilage is a complex mixture of stuff. So I started looking at it, I'm like, I wonder if there have been any scientific studies published on this recently. Because like, oh man, scientific research on herbs is just on fire around the world right now. Very encouraging. So there's new papers coming out all the time. So I went and looked, and like there was like, oh, yeah. And then one of them was like immunostimulant activities of marshmallow root. And I'm like, we did, let me learn about this. And so I got into that, and I was like, that makes so much sense, because I kind of heard of that before. I didn't know it in depth, but I read some of these papers, and I'm like, that makes so much sense in that UTI formula.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So it's not just a cooling, soothing demulcent, it's an immunostimulant too. So it helps you kill those bacteria that have gotten into the bladder.
Oh, I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
I know. I'm still like
So
telling
you're going to have fun teaching this class too, from the looks of it.
wait, what's that?
Said you're going to have fun teaching that class too,
Yeah.
because you get to learn more and more
I know. Well,
as
that's
it
the
goes.
thing. It's like, what do I almost know about? That's what I need to study so that I can teach people about. And another thing I learned from that was that like, inulin, right? Like burdock root inulin,
Yeah.
it feeds your good gut microbes, and that just helps everything, like everything.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we learn burdock root as an excellent source of inulin, right? Helps balance blood sugar too, and
Yeah.
dandelion root. That inulin was my friend since the beginning, right? I did not realize there's a bunch of inulin in echinacea root,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, echinacea root has those tingly, buzzy that you get, they're called alkamides. You get them in tinctures. And they are both immune modulators and anti-inflammatory constituents, right?
Perfect for that formula we were talking about.
I know, right? And then the water extract of the echinacea root, you get immunomodulating polysaccharides. The herb is really famous for those. But you also get all these inulins, right? Which feed the gut microbes. But then I go down in there, and it's like, guess what? Inulins are also build the immune system. They don't just feed the gut microbes. So now they're immunomodulating polysaccharides too, and I'm just like, echinacea, and then I was like, how do you get a really great concentration of inulins and polysaccharides out of echinacea root? Oh, you decoct it, just like we learned in herb school. Echinacea root decoction. And then squirt your tincture in, and you've got like, so that was super exciting, putting all those different pieces together when I was working on the last phytosapiens stuff.
Oh, I love that. And so what is the other website they can find you at?
So that's our farm, elderberriesfarm.com, and it's RRYS with no apostrophe because you can't put the apostrophe
on the
URL. Yeah. But I did it that way because I dedicated this farm to the elderberry. I'm like, I don't really entirely believe in like landowning, even though I'm a landowner, because I don't think humans can actually own Mother Earth, but that's the game that we play in America. So I was like, let me say that this farm belongs to elderberry. So
cool. I love that.
Farm.com. Yeah. And, an elderberry bush actually welcomed me to this area, which was another amazing thing. I'm like, look at you. But so we're in what we call the North Fork Valley of the Gunnison River. North Fork of the Gunnison River. It's the western slope of Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of people know where Aspen is, for
Mm-hmm.
example, and it's like Aspen is over that way about 40 miles, but you can't get there from here.
As the crow flies.
Yeah, so you go to the mountains, the valleys, it takes about 2.5 hours to get to Aspen. But so we're in that part of Colorado where it's super mountainous off to the
Mm-hmm.
east, but then the deserty part starts to the west of us,
Oh, beautiful.
which is cool. So we're in this transitional zone
Yeah.
where we get snow melt irrigation, and then it's like hot in the summer and kind of cold, but not that cold in the winter. And it's a really interesting place to have an herb farm.
Oh,
Really,
it sounds like it.
yeah, because some things are like, yes, and they grow like mad, and other things are like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I was about to make that same voice.
Right. Like,
So, I think our attitude plants are related or something. Oh, that's
What's
hysterical.
really funny is I got pokeweed to grow here.
Oh, wow. I can't
It doesn't even
stop
make
pokeweed from growing
sense.
where I am.
Oh, yeah, it's not even supposed to be able to grow here. It's not on
Isn't that
like the
funny?
zone list, but we work that out. So but you get this combination of like Western bioregional herbs, like
Mm-hmm.
like Michael Moore, type herbs,
Mm-hmm.
but also these like mountainous, herbs will grow here. It's nothing like the Appalachian. It's totally different.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like
I would
super fertile,
imagine.
actually. Yeah.
Wow. How exciting. So where can people get your book?
Oh, they can buy it. You know what?
Can they
Oh,
get it directly from you
yeah,
or
you don't have to buy it from the devil.
okay.
Although the devil moves a lot of books. But you can get it from lulu.com. That's my
Okay.
printer publisher.
Mm-hmm.
lulu.com. It's the best way to
Mm-hmm.
buy it. And then I learned about this new online bookstore. I put a thing up on my socials about it, and now I'm blanking on it because I got it from someone else. I literally forget the name of it, but it's really cool because they're an indie bookseller and they give like 10 or 15% of all their sales back to actual independent bookstores,
Oh, that's cool.
which is, yeah, they're
It's not
really,
Powell's, is it?
what is,
Powell's is the big one in out west, Powell's.
no.
Okay, because I know they're a big
Um,
independent bookstore, but
yeah, I
that's
just learned
really
about
cool.
this. If people go see my Facebook or whatever.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So people go look at her Facebook and find that bookstore.
Yeah, because I just ordered a bunch of books from them,
Oh,
because
cool.
I'm like, yay, I like my money to go to good, supportive, actual people instead of large,
Yeah,
like
I'm like
corporations.
famous for that. Like
Mm,
to the
yeah.
point I think it probably drives people crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
I just don't
you
like
know,
I like to buy stuff from my neighbors,
for sure.
you
That's
know?
really what we do here. We're like, we need some chickens. We go over there. Do you guys have any bacon? Like, that's what I
Yeah,
love about this valley. This is the highest concentration of organic agriculture in Colorado.
that's so awesome.
It's so awesome. And we have orchards, vineyards,
Oh,
Northern
wow.
Valley now, orchards, vineyards, herb farms, flower farms, vegetable farms, heritage livestock farms,
That's
yak
so cool.
ranches. I
Oh,
mean,
love it.
wild out here. Like there's a gold medal trout stream right over the hills, you know.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
so this valley is very into producing its own food and medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and regenerative agriculture is like the hot topic right now. And lots of really good Colorado cannabis is grown here, cannabis and hemp. So it's like all about plants.
Yeah, for real, right? That is so exciting. I'm really like we're really into well, we raise almost all of our own food.
Wow.
Um,
Right on.
but also just like I just love the idea of supporting other people who are in this journey from, who I buy my dishes from, who makes my clothing. Like I really like thinking about things a little bit
Mhm.
differently
I
to
think it's more
support
important
my
than ever,
neighbors.
right? Because it's
Yeah,
part of the
yeah.
community too. you know,
Yeah.
so you go and we trade. We do a lot of trading here
Oh,
also.
cool. That's awesome.
They
That's
traded for a
really great.
pile of firewoods and consultations, you know, or whatever. Because I think like a strong local economy and a strong community, and even like the economic aspect of that is super important, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, and I
super.
think it makes you become one with people maybe you don't always come into contact with.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, our paths would never cross except for at the farmer's market. And
Yeah.
then we become friends and then we get to know each other and then we care about each other's,
Yeah.
things, even if we're like, we have nothing else in common but this. There's
Yeah.
always that uniter and I think that makes community strong. So I love that you have that.
Big
That's
time. I
beautiful.
mean, farmers markets are kind of key, you know what I'm saying? Like I
Yeah.
go, I go in town, I go to the farmer's market, I buy a few veggies and whatever. Mostly I go to socialize, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a great way to get to know people and see what's going on, what people are looking for,
Mhm. And there's
as
always
far
like
as,
at least two and sometimes three herbalists at our teeny little town farmers market, you know? So you're like, hey, what's up? What have you been doing lately? Try this, you know?
yeah,
So it's
cool.
important community building event for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Speaking of community, thank you so
Yeah.
much for being here today. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, I will let you know when we have everything up because I think the students are going to be so excited to see this with you. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. And I just
Well,
thank you.
well, thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Absolutely. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks and
Okay.
have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.